The harsh klaxon of the space station's alarm shattered the silence, pulling Commander Raina Kovacs from her restless thoughts. The low hum of the station's power grid thrummed under her feet as she strode into the command center. Bright red warning lights blinked on every console, the tactical display casting an ominous glow across the room. "They've come," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Her fingers danced across the console, pulling up the feed from the long-range sensors. A mass of alien ships, sleek and imposing, filled the screen. Their formation moved with terrifying precision, like predators on the hunt. Sergeant Carter stepped beside her, his usual cocky grin nowhere to be found. "That's a whole lot of ships for a scouting mission," he said, eyes narrowing. Raina's jaw clenched. "They're not here to scout, Carter. They're here to wipe us out." The weight of those words pressed on her chest, a sensation that matched the growing tension in the room. The outpost was humanity's last defense on the edge of known space, and now it was their turn to face the full might of an enemy force far more advanced than anything they'd encountered before. Earth's forces were spread thin, scattered across countless worlds. No help was coming. Carter broke the heavy silence. "Reckon we could hold them off until reinforcements get here?" Her gaze flickered to the countdown on the screen. 3 hours, if the last transmission was accurate. It may as well have been 3 days. She turned to him, her tone hard. "We don't have the firepower. Not enough to last until they arrive." The air in the command center was thick with the hum of failing hope, the crew around them exchanging nervous glances. Their eyes found her, waiting, needing leadership, direction, a spark of something other than the inevitability of death. Kovacs squared her shoulders. "Initiate full lockdown. Prepare the shield grid and power all weapons. We'll make them fight for every inch." Her voice cut through the haze, and like a well-oiled machine, the crew snapped into motion. Orders were barked, consoles flashed to life, and the once quiet station transformed into a hive of activity. Carter's brow furrowed. "You sure about this, Commander? Going toe-to-toe with them sounds like a good way to get us all killed." She shot him a look, steel in her eyes. "We're the last line between them and Earth. We can't let them through." The distant thrum of engines grew louder, the alien fleet closing in, their vast warships gliding closer with each passing second. Kovacs' heart pounded in time with the station's alarms, the tactical display flashing urgent warnings. The red blips on the screen multiplied, until the station was surrounded. This was it. Carter leaned in, voice low. "What's the plan, boss?" Kovacs took a deep breath, pushing down the fear gnawing at her insides. She had to stay focused. "We buy time. We hit them hard, fast, and make them think twice before closing the gap." Her hand hovered over the firing controls. "Then, when they least expect it, we hit them where it hurts." As the alien ships broke formation, moving in for the first strike, Raina locked her gaze on the main view screen. "For Earth," she whispered, fingers tightening around the trigger. The battle had begun. The hum of the station shields reverberated through the floor, a subtle vibration that promised safety but held an undercurrent of fragility. Raina Kovacs' gaze was locked on the view screen as the alien ships moved into formation, sleek vessels made of dark alloy, barely reflecting the distant starlight. They advanced like silent predators, their intent unmistakable. "Shields holding at 90%, Lieutenant O'Hara reported, his voice cutting through the tense atmosphere. His fingers darted across the console, sweat beading on his forehead. "But those warships are charging their main cannons. We can't take too many direct hits." Kovacs leaned over the console, eyes narrowing as she examined the tactical display. The enemy's ships were positioning themselves for a calculated assault. She could see it in their movements, the precision, the calculated slowness of their approach. They were sizing them up. "Commander, they're baiting us," Sergeant Carter warned, his tone grim. He stood beside her, arms crossed, eyes sharp with suspicion. "They want us to fire first." "I know," Kovacs replied, her jaw tightening. "But we don't have the luxury of waiting for the perfect shot." She glanced at the countdown. 2 hours and 50 minutes until the reinforcements could arrive. It might as well have been an eternity. Every second dragged like a noose tightening around their throats. "We're not going to survive a drawn-out engagement," Kovacs muttered, half to herself. Her fingers hovered over the holographic display, analyzing the enemy fleet's formation. There had to be a weakness. Something they could exploit. O'Hara's voice cut through her concentration. "Incoming transmission from the lead alien ship. They're hailing us. Patch it through." Reyna straightened, her pulse quickening. The alien communications had been radio silence until now. What could they possibly want? The screen flickered, revealing a towering figure encased in a dark metallic suit, its glowing red eyes fixed on her. Its voice was distorted, a mechanical growl that sent shivers down the spines of the crew. "Humans, you stand in defiance of the Empire," the alien commander intoned, the voice dripping with disdain. "Surrender your station and submit, or face annihilation. This is your only warning." Reyna's eyes narrowed. She could feel the weight of every crew member's gaze on her, waiting for her response. Every instinct screamed to hold firm, but the looming threat of destruction made her pulse race. Her mind reeled with possibilities, weighing the cost of every decision. Carter leaned in, his voice low. "They're bluffing. They don't want to lose ships either. We hit them hard, we might scare them off." Reyna didn't blink as she stared at the alien commander's unyielding red eyes. "I have a better idea." She straightened, her voice cold as steel. "Commander Kovacs of the Terran Defense Outpost," she said, each word deliberate and unwavering. "We do not surrender. Not now, not ever." She severed the transmission with a flick of her hand before the alien could respond, the screen snapping back to the tactical display. Silence filled the room for a heartbeat, tension thickening like a storm about to break. "Brace for retaliation," Kovacs ordered, her voice calm despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. As if on cue, the first volley of plasma fire erupted from the alien fleet, streaking toward the station. The impacts hit the shields with a thunderous roar, sending shudders through the hull. The lights flickered, consoles sparking as power reserves fluctuated. "Shields down to 70%! O'Hara shouted over the din. "Multiple hits incoming!" Kovacs gripped the edge of the console, heart racing as the tactical display lit up with enemy fire. "Return fire! Focus on their flanks, take out their smaller ships first." The station's turrets roared to life, unleashing a barrage of kinetic rounds and missile fire. Explosions bloomed in the void, small ships vaporizing under the intense barrage. But it wasn't enough. The larger warships remained unscathed, methodically advancing. "Commander, they're overwhelming us!" Carter shouted, gripping his station as the shields fluctuated again. "I know," Kovacs muttered, her eyes scanning the display. "Just hold." The enemy's fire intensified, their weapons relentless. Reyna's stomach twisted. The shields were holding, but barely. She could see the lines of stress fractures beginning to spider across the energy field. The station couldn't take much more. Suddenly, an idea hit her, dangerous, desperate, but it was their only chance. She turned to O'Hara, her voice tight with urgency. "Redirect all power to the forward thrusters." O'Hara blinked, momentarily stunned. "But Commander, that'll leave us without shields." "I know." "Do it," she snapped, eyes blazing. "We're going to ram them." Carter's eyes widened, but a grin tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Now that's a plan." The station lurched forward, its engines roaring to life, closing the distance between them and the nearest alien ship. Kovacs could feel the tension coiling in her gut as the seconds ticked down. "On my mark," she whispered, staring at the incoming warship like a hawk eyeing its prey. The station hurtled forward, the alien ship looming large in the view screen. "Now!" The station collided with the enemy ship in a deafening crash, the impact sending shockwaves through the structure. Metal screamed and buckled, but the alien vessel shattered like glass, debris scattering into the void. Silence fell as the alien fleet faltered, hesitating. Reyna let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "Prepare for round two," she said, voice steady, as the crew scrambled to recover. The fight was far from over. Reyna Kovacs braced herself against the console as the station shuddered from the impact, alarms blaring a chaotic symphony of warnings. Smoke filled the control room, the acrid scent stinging her nostrils. The glow of red emergency lights illuminated the faces of her crew, casting shadows that danced with the flickering screens. "Damage report!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. Every moment counted. They needed to assess their situation quickly. O'Hara, still at his post, struggled to maintain his composure. "The forward thrusters are offline. We've lost power to several decks. Shields are down to 30%. His fingers flew across the console, frantically trying to stabilize the systems. "We can't take another hit like that. Get engineering on the line," Kovacs ordered, the weight of command pressing heavily on her shoulders. "I need them to reroute power from non-essential systems to the shields. We're still in this fight." Carter stood beside her, gripping the edge of the console, his face a mask of determination. "Commander, we took down one of their ships, but they're regrouping. We need a plan, fast." Reyna nodded, her mind racing. They had made a bold move, but the real challenge lay ahead. The alien fleet was not only formidable but also relentless. They had a reputation for striking fear into the hearts of their enemies. Now they were staring down the remnants of the Terran defense outpost, wounded but not defeated. "Get me the status on the remaining enemy vessels," Reyna commanded, her voice steady despite the turmoil around her. "We need to know what we're dealing with." A flicker on the screen revealed the enemy's ships realigning, their formations adapting to the loss of one of their own. Kovacs' heart raced. They were preparing for a counterattack. "Looks like they're repositioning for a coordinated strike," O'Hara said, his eyes wide with realization. "They know we're vulnerable." "Not if we can outsmart them," Reyna replied, her mind whirling with possibilities. "Carter, what's the status of our remaining weapons?" "We've got 2 operational plasma turrets and 3 missile bays," Carter reported, a hint of optimism seeping into his voice. "It's not much, but if we can time our fire—" "Timing will be everything," Reyna interjected. "If we can lure them into firing range and hit them before they can retaliate, we might turn the tide." She began to outline a plan, her thoughts gaining clarity. "O'Hara, can you simulate a power surge on our remaining turrets? If we can make it look like we're about to unleash everything we have, it might force them to attack prematurely." "Worth a shot," O'Hara replied, fingers tapping furiously on the console. As he worked, Reyna turned to Carter. "We need to create a diversion. Make it seem like we're vulnerable but ready to fire. Once they take the bait, we'll hit them hard with everything we have left." Carter's face brightened. "I can set up a holographic projection of our turrets firing in sequence. It'll look like we're launching a full assault, even if we're not." "Do it," Reyna ordered, determination igniting her resolve. She could feel the tension in the air, the anticipation building as they prepared for the next phase of their battle. Outside, the alien fleet had begun to close in, ships like dark shadows against the stars. Reyna steeled herself, watching the display as the enemy vessels advanced, weapons charged and ready. Each tick of the clock echoed in her ears, heightening her senses. "Status?" she called out, adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Enemies closing in fast, Commander." O'Hara's voice was strained but focused. "They're going to fire soon." "On my mark," Reyna said, her heart racing as she calculated their next move. "Prepare for the diversion, Carter. O'Hara, get those shields up as much as you can." Carter nodded, a glint of excitement in his eyes. "Holoads are ready. Just give me the signal." The alien ships surged forward, relentless and unforgiving. Reyna's breath hitched as she felt the weight of every decision pressing upon her. They had to act now. "Mark!" Reyna shouted. In an instant, the holographic projectors burst to life, simulating the intense fire of their plasma turrets. The light show dazzled the eyes, creating an illusion of strength in the face of overwhelming odds. The enemy's ships hesitated, momentarily confused by the sudden display of power. "Now, fire the missile bays!" Reyna ordered, her voice rising above the cacophony. The remaining missiles launched, streaking toward the enemy fleet with unerring accuracy. Reyna's heart soared as she watched the first missile strike true, detonating against the flank of an enemy vessel. Explosions erupted, illuminating the void as debris scattered like confetti in the aftermath. "Direct hit! They're taking damage!" O'Hara exclaimed, his face lighting up with newfound hope. "Keep it coming! Don't let up!" Reyna urged, adrenaline surging through her veins. The alien fleet responded in kind, unleashing a hailstorm of plasma fire. The station shuddered under the assault, the shields flickering as the enemy pressed their advantage. But Reyna felt invigorated, their defiance igniting a spark in her chest. They were not merely defending, they were fighting back. "Commander!" Carter's voice rang out, cutting through the chaos. "They're regrouping! We can hit them again if we act fast!" "Can we?" Reyna started, but O'Hara interrupted her. "They're vulnerable, Commander. We need to take advantage of their confusion. It's now or never!" Reyna's heart raced. "Redirect everything to our remaining weapons! Prepare for another missile strike!" As the crew rallied to her command, Reyna felt a surge of hope. The tide of battle was shifting. They were no longer prey, they were hunters. The weight of their situation still loomed, but the flicker of victory ignited a fire within her. "On my mark, prepare for launch," she said, voice firm. "Ready when you are," Carter called, his eyes fierce with determination. The alien ships shifted again, attempting to recover from their losses. Reyna's breath quickened. This was the moment. "Now! Fire!" she shouted, her voice ringing with authority. The missiles launched, streaking through the void like silver comets, each one destined to strike the heart of their enemy. Reyna watched as they connected, detonating with a resounding force that sent shockwaves through the battlefield. But amid the chaos, a new realization struck her: this was only the beginning. The alien fleet was regrouping, their resolve hardened by the battle. They were not finished yet, and neither were they. As Reyna prepared for the next wave of their fight, she knew one thing for certain: they would not go down without a fight. The piercing sound of the emergency klaxon reverberated through the control room, a grim reminder of their dire situation. Reyna Kovacs stood at the center of the chaos, her heart pounding with the adrenaline of battle. Smoke still wafted in from the breached sections of the station, clinging to her throat and mixing with the acrid scent of burnt circuitry. A violent shudder rippled through the floor as another enemy vessel unleashed a barrage of fire. "Report!" she shouted, her voice a sharp contrast to the cacophony surrounding her. O'Hara, with sweat beading on his brow, was working frantically at his console. "Shields are fluctuating at 15%. We're losing power in multiple sectors, Commander. Engineering can't keep up." Reyna clenched her fists. Every word he spoke weighed heavily on her shoulders. They were running out of time, and she had to make a choice, one that could either save her crew or doom them all. "Divert all remaining power to the shields," she ordered, her voice steady. "We can't afford to lose them completely." "But, Commander," O'Hara protested, his fingers hovering over the controls. "If we do that, we won't have enough power for the weapon systems. We'll be sitting ducks. Better to be a duck than a corpse." Reyna snapped, frustration bubbling within her. She caught herself, taking a deep breath. "We need to protect what we have left. We can't fight back if we're dead. Focus on defense first." "Understood," O'Hara muttered, his fingers dancing across the controls as he complied with her command. Reyna turned her attention to Carter, who was scanning the tactical readouts, his brow furrowed in concentration. "What's our status on the enemy fleet?" she asked, her voice calm despite the chaos around them. "They're regrouping, but they're not retreating," Carter replied, his gaze fixed on the screen. "Their numbers are still formidable. They're adjusting their formation for a full assault. If we don't find a way to counter this, they'll break through our defenses." Reyna felt a surge of determination, a fierce urge to protect her crew and her home. "We need to find a weakness," she said, pacing the small space, her mind racing. They're overconfident after our initial losses. We need to exploit that. Carter's expression brightened. We could initiate a feint. If we can trick them into thinking we're more vulnerable than we are, it might give us the edge we need. Good idea, Reyna said, nodding in agreement. We can simulate a systems failure on the starboard side. If they take the bait, we can launch a counteroffensive. Commander! O'Hara's voice broke through her thoughts, urgency palpable. They're launching another wave. We don't have much time. Let's move, then, Reyna commanded. Carter, get that holographic projector ready. O'Hara, prep the missile bays. We need to be quick. The crew scrambled, each member laser-focused on their tasks. Reyna felt the tension rise in the air, a palpable electric charge as they worked together, united by their shared goal. As the holographic projectors hummed to life, Reyna's heart raced. The display flickered to life, simulating the starboard section of the station losing power. Red lights flashed ominously, mimicking a critical failure. Activate it! She shouted, her voice cutting through the clamor of the control room. The crew reacted swiftly, activating the projection. The illusion appeared convincing, showing the station's defenses faltering, as enemy ships approached, emboldened by what they perceived as a weakness. Now we wait, Reyna murmured, her eyes locked on the screen, heart thudding in her chest. The enemy fleet closed in, their ships gliding through the void like predators sensing vulnerability. Reyna felt a knot in her stomach as she watched them descend upon her crew. Would this gamble pay off? Now! Carter shouted, eyes ablaze with determination. They're taking the bait! Fire the missiles! Reyna ordered, adrenaline surging through her veins. As the missiles shot forth, bright streaks of light against the dark backdrop of space, Reyna held her breath. They struck the enemy vessels with pinpoint accuracy, explosions rippling across the enemy fleet. She felt a rush of exhilaration as debris scattered in all directions. Direct hits! They're in disarray! O'Hara exclaimed, his voice rising with enthusiasm. Keep firing! Don't let up! Reyna commanded, her heart racing. They were still at a disadvantage, but every hit counted, every moment brought them closer to victory. Suddenly, alarms blared once more, pulling her attention back to the screens. Incoming fire! O'Hara shouted, his fingers moving at lightning speed. They've regrouped and are retaliating. Brace for impact! Reyna yelled, adrenaline flooding her system. The station rocked violently as the enemy's barrage hit, sending waves of energy rippling through the control room. Reyna clutched the edge of the console, her heart pounding. They needed to stay focused. Keep those shields up! O'Hara, redirect power! Reyna shouted, struggling to keep her voice steady amidst the chaos. I'm trying! But the overload is too much! O'Hara replied, panic creeping into his voice. We can't sustain this for long. Then we need to find a way to turn this around. Reyna replied, her mind racing. We can't wait for them to break through our defenses. We have to take the fight to them. The room fell silent for a moment, the crew exchanging glances filled with both fear and determination. Reyna knew they had to act fast before their situation deteriorated further. Carter! She called, her voice firm. What are the options for a counteroffensive? Carter's brow furrowed in concentration. If we can get close enough to the enemy flagship, we might be able to disable their command systems. It could throw their entire fleet into chaos. Reyna considered the idea, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Can we do it? Can we get close without compromising our shields? Carter nodded, excitement sparking in his eyes. If we can find a way to maneuver in under their radar, we could launch a surprise attack. Then that's our plan, Reyna declared, her voice resolute. O'Hara, prepare for evasive maneuvers. Carter, keep an eye on their formations. We'll have one chance to strike. As they set the plan in motion, Reyna felt the tension in the control room rise once more, but this time it was tempered by a flicker of hope. They were no longer the prey, they were the hunters. Commander, we're ready to move, O'Hara said, his voice steady as he initiated the thrusters. Let's go! Reyna shouted, gripping the console as the station lurched into action. They would fight for their survival. They would fight for their home. The enemy fleet loomed ahead, a colossal wall of darkness. Reyna felt a surge of defiance as they approached. No longer would they be at the mercy of their adversaries. It was time to reclaim their fate. As they closed the distance, Reyna prepared for the most crucial moment of their fight. They would strike back, not just for survival, but for every soul on that station. The tide of battle was about to turn, and she would lead her crew into the heart of the storm.